There are a lot of different things going on in our society that have resulted in a lot of different collisions. I would probably say the largest collision being between perception and reality, in a lot of different contexts, probably. But and this has resulted in one of the biggest responses in our culture, American and abroad, that I think social media would call the manosphere, uh, and these fault lines that have been drawn, and the different feuding, the gender wars that have resulted because of these collisions. A lot of different social media influencers have taken rise as a result of that, even before the ones that are most popular today. I would say that Jordan Peterson is one of the beginning ones.
I didn't say that women shouldn't be striving for the top or anything like that, because I don't believe that for a second.
Striving for the top, but you're going to put all those hurdles in their way, as has been in their way for centuries, and that's fine. You're saying that's fine.
No, I really
The
think
patriarchal system
I really
is
think
just
that's
fine.
silly. I do.
And even Kevin Samuels as well.
So yeah, there's an upper limit and a lower limit. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think determines a woman's limit on the dating market?
I wasn't well versed on a lot of this stuff while it was happening, but then you had others like Andrew Tate, all this wide array of individuals who seem to be they were placed on a platform to be a voice for that which is common in human flourishing. It seems that's my perception of the way people receive these voices. Kevin Samuels has since deceased. Andrew Tate is imprisoned, and so in some of these conversations that have come up, and because of so much foolishness that seems to be a result of these newfound conversations, as more and more people with degrees, and if they're going to their colleges with gender studies degrees, have entered the conversation, we seem to get dumber. Now, I don't mean that as a slight to people with gender studies degrees. I mean that as a specific slight towards gender studies degrees. I don't think we needed universities to tell us what genders were. In the moment we had universities telling us what genders were, is the moment humanity starts to get it wrong. And so necessarily fault lines were created and pushback was created. And I think in a good way, but then there seems to be a not so healthy way. When I get on my internets, when I get on the internets, the interwebs, and I get on YouTube, a lot of different things are actually recommended to me that represent what you would call this manosphere. But then I see a lot of like replicas. I see a lot of lower level manosphere things that seem to be taking after this stuff, but it's rooted in a lot of toxicity. And I don't mean toxicity in the way that manhood and masculinity is toxic, as the world would tell you today. I'm talking about toxicity where it's like men and women hate each other. Men and women ought to be feuding against one another and hating each other. And I think that's significant in a couple of ways. Uh, one of the responses we're seeing to the crash of our society is this conservative view of manhood and womanhood. Pendulum has swung so far left that women are actually coming out and saying things like this.
I will say, across the board, Black women are the lowest in terms of dating and marrying. In fact, actually, Black women are high in dating because we give up sex the most. We're for the streets. We're twerking. We're doing the most. We dominate rap in the culture that is very sexual, especially in the U.S. So a lot of men see us as easy targets.
And you do have some shows, some podcasts that are more respectable like this. But then you have podcasts that just want to highlight the tomfoolery that we are all embellished with in our society, kind of like this.
There's them, they thems.
No, the them refers to the men and the women.
No, but he
man
said
is the
them,
gender
so
neutral
it's
word.
like they, them.
He was referring to both of them.
But he said them, so he's like saying man created men and women in them. So he
No, he said in the beginning God created man, both male and female created he them.
Them.
What? So as a result of this, a lot of people's voices have taken rise, and people are actually yearning to hear just some truth. But this is my pet peeve, and I'm not going to dive deep in this video, but I'm hoping that Darren and I, my brother who do our podcast, that we can dive into this a little bit, because one of the bigger responses politically to our society has been conservatism. But people have likened conservatism with Christianity without actually likening it to Christianity. What do I mean by that? You have people who point out issues in our society like this.
So he's not that much older.
Yeah.
But that same 23-year-old will sleep with and go after someone my age. Is he serious? This happens every day. But I say to myself, like, so what happens is these older women will feel like, okay, well, that little 20-something-year-old, she can't do nothing for you, boo. Let's come over here and I'm going to do this. I'm going to put it on you. She's not grown. She's immature. This is how these older women are thinking, these cougars. And so they see you as competition instead of loving on you and wanting.
And the answer seems to be to have a more conservative approach, because conservatism works. And I'm not here to say that's not true. I'm here to say that that's the wrong goal. That's actually the wrong target. The issue with utilizing this or making this the target is that now the answer still lies within our hands, or within our power is what I'm trying to say. The answer still lies within our own capabilities, and it's not true. Yes, there is a lot of poison. There are a lot of lies that people are believing in human society, but the answer is still not human society just going a different direction. It can't be. It can't be. I think that's one thing that conservatism is lacking. That's one thing that this manosphere conversation is lacking. I love that people are valuing marriages. I love that people are valuing biblical gender roles like male headship, women submissiveness. Those things are beautiful. They're not to be seen as men are in charge and women are beneath. But in the manosphere realm, that seems to be the way that it's presented. The man makes all the dollars, right? The man is the strong one who's willing to die and fight. So the woman ought to be submissive. Like, no, that's actually not a biblical ethic. As a matter of fact, that's closer to the ethic that Paul rebuked. That might be a conservative ethic, but it's not a biblical ethic. See, a biblical ethic says that the man ought to die daily. The wife ought to be submissive and respect her husband, but it's the man's dying that never makes her regret her submission. But the man sees his wife not as the lesser, but as himself. No one ever hated his own flesh, Paul says. So it's very different from this thing being, look, we're different. We're biologically different. The man is stronger. The man is bigger. Typically, generally speaking, the man makes money. The woman keeps the home. She is the kingdom ruler of the house in a sense. And all of these things actually have truth to them. There's a lot of truth to it. But it isn't like so therefore, that's why you submit. No, the therefore is a result of God's mandate, number one. Now, God has mandated us this way, that there is a beautiful picture that he has revealed to all of humanity, saying that picture is a representation of God's relationship with his people, that relationship being Jesus and the church. Jesus is in the role of the husband as the one who dies, that the church would be born again and redeemed and washed and beautiful. And the church's role is that of the bride that submits and cherishes and honors him with their life. And then that's all that marriage is a picture of that relationship. That's what we're trying to do. And the husband is playing a role and the wife is playing a role. And they both step in and they say, Lord, this is the role I want to play so that people would know you're beautiful. That's why we do it. We don't look at the differences and say, hey, so this is how things should work logically. They do work out logically because God is logic. He makes sense. But that's not the reason. The reason is obedience. The reason is ultimate submission to him. That's why. The manosphere misses that. Number two, the manosphere seems to play into this gender warfare, this gender battle, saying, see, I told you men are stronger than women. Women can't do everything. We already know that. We don't need to engage in that battle. See, strong men don't need to beat women up to prove they're strong. But I see that in a lot of different videos. Strong men don't need to put women down to show that they're strong. Strong men actually approach men, because a society will flourish or it'll fail with men at the helm. So I like seeing that there are these melting pots and there are these, like, I guess, podcast structures where people are just gathered in one room and mind melting and throwing together ideas and talking about ideas that could help society flourish.
Hold them accountable. The women are opening their legs. You just said that women control sex. How are the 80% of men just running through these women? Are you saying it's not?
But I don't hear people talking about the gospel, even people with the most conservative of views who are talking about biblical stances on marriage, biblical stances on sexual immorality, biblical stances on promiscuity. They're talking about biblical stances on these things without being explicitly biblical. And so I'd like to see some believers in these arenas to present the biblical view so that people can know that it's the biblical ethic that they're going for. And it's actually God's goodness that they've tasted and they want others to taste and see that it's good. There's a famous quote, Robert Jastrow, who's talking about how in this feud between science and faith, and how science apparently uh, falsely pitted against faith and reason, biblical reason. Scientist has always tried to show itself more reasonable, more intellectual, more perceiving of reality than the religious person or the biblical Christian. And Robert Jastrow, who's kind of watching this exchange in the culture as an agnostic at best, atheist at worst, he said this: "For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. And as he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries." And that made, I thought about that thought as I was scrolling through the internet and just seeing all these different clips who are arguing on behalf of healthy marriages and healthy relationship and healthy manhood and healthy womanhood. And I feel that in this gender feud that's happening in our culture right now, there are going to be teams that are chosen. Obviously, the obvious team that is chosen that are being chosen right now are the teams that are on the left and the teams that are on the right. But I feel like even on the right, there are going to be some teams that are formed that are already happening now. It's going to be between Christians and those who merely identify themselves as conservative. And I feel like in relation to Robert Jastrow's quote, there's going to be something like a bad dream that ends for the conservative that has put all their hope in the reason of conservatism. And after they scaled the mountains of conservatism and doing things in a healthy and holistic way for the better and flourishing of humanity, once they climb the final peak, they'll see a band of healthy Christian marriages who have been sitting there for millennia.